Okay, we're on? Good. Okay, several people are, like Neil said, are going to talk tonight. What I'm going to be talking about tonight has nothing to do with wood turning, except you finish things on wood turning, but it could apply to anything. I'm going to kind of go back to the very basics of finishes and tell you what I know, and sometimes I'll tell you even more than what I know. What are finishes, and why is it so confusing sometimes? So finishing can be a confusing and mystifying subject. It's compounded by package labeling, which doesn't always reveal what a finished product actually is. In this talk, I'm going to describe types of finishes and show a variety of products, as you can see up here. I'm going to classify them into the different types so we can get straight on that. Finishes are based on the solvent they use. So we're going to talk about solvents first. And then secondly, the material that's in the solvent that becomes the finish once the solvent evaporates. The finish type, it can be oil, shellac, lacquer, varnish, wax, and then there's some other finishes, particularly that wood turners use, like CA glue. CA glue, I don't think anybody intended to be a finish, but it winds up becoming a finish, and very successfully so, I think. And then there's some other more modern finishes that are out there these days, and I'm not going to get into those. Catalyzed, pre-catalyzed, epoxies, sort of exotic finishes, conversion varnishes, and things like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of finishing too, so I hope that'll be interesting. So where did finishing start? It goes way back. What were the first finishes that were out there? Wax would have been one of the first ones, paste wax. We've had different kind of natural waxes that people have used for a long time. Another one is varnish. Varnish is a resin from a tree. So you get the resin out of the tree, you mix it with a little oil and heat it up, and you've got a finish. And for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that was basically the finish that we had to work with. It's something you can find way back in Egyptian days. On the other hand, there are a lot more modern finishes that have come about in the last couple hundred years. So I'm going to talk about some of those. The solvents that we have, I don't have a can of it up here, but everybody's familiar with mineral spirits. So mineral spirits is probably what you're most familiar with. If you have polyurethane or varnish, you use mineral spirits as the thinner, or when they make it, they use mineral spirits as the solvent that goes in the product. So polyurethane, typically, it's going to have mineral spirits. Now, where I have learned about finishing is by taking some courses. Like most people, woodworkers, finishing has been that last step that's been a little confusing, mysterious. You've got all these things. You're not quite sure what one thing is different from another. And so I took a class from this guy, Bob Flexner, that did this book here. And I've also had a class from this guy, Jeff Jewett. Jeff's from Cleveland. He has a company that has finishing products. If you've ever used Trans Tint, that would be Homestead products, and that's Jeff Jewett's. Also, this is Shellac Flakes here. This comes from Jeff's company. So Jeff not only does finishing, he has products in the finishing business. He's done books, he does classes, so he's done quite a bit. You'll run into Bob Flexner in quite a few different places. These people have written in like Fine Woodworking, Popular Woodworking, American Woodworker, so in a lot of places. But here's something that was one of Bob Flexner's favorite things to say. Most manufacturers do not list ingredients on their containers. Some even claim to have developed their products in someone's basement. But there are no essential secrets in finishes. One of the pioneers of modern finishes, William Crumpar, once said, "The real reason for secrecy in finishing is the necessity of concealing the fact that there is nothing to conceal." So there's a lot of mystery about finishing, and the product labeling is one of the worst parts of that. When you see a lot of these products, they can be all essentially the same, and they have dramatically different labels on them. So we'll talk about some of that. But I recommend these two guys. They partly because I've had some experience with them and been in classes with them, but they really know what they're talking about. So these have been good books. So back to mineral spirits. Mineral spirits and paint thinner. Does anybody know what the difference is between mineral spirits and paint thinner? There are two products that you can buy on the shelf. One's about twice as expensive as the other. There is no difference. They're the same product. If you see paint thinner or mineral spirits, it's the same thing. But that's where you get into product labeling and marketing. So next, we have alcohol. Here's denatured alcohol. There's lots of different kinds of alcohol. You can have wood alcohol, whatnot. This is denatured alcohol, and it's the most commonly used in finishing as far as a solvent for shellac. And it's called denatured alcohol because what this is ethanol or grain alcohol. If it wasn't denatured, which means they stuck poison in it, you could drink it, and it would. But more importantly, they would tax it. So if it didn't have the denatured in it, then they would tax it like liquor. But they make it poison, and they can sell it cheaper because it doesn't have the tax on it. So, but if you want, you can go get some Everclear, and you can use it for both purposes. This stuff, yeah. But I'm sure a gallon of Everclear is probably more than a gallon of this stuff here. Then there's another substance called lacquer thinner. Lacquer is a product of modern chemistry, and it has lots of things in it. But it is there's nothing natural about it. A lot of the finishing products can be natural substances, like these shellac flakes. This is a natural substance. As Pete was pointing out earlier, this is what's on the shell of a M&M. So you can eat it. A lot of pills have a coating of shellac on them, and it dissolves when it gets into your system. So if you use Everclear and shellac, the combination is still food safe. You can eat it, drink it. I don't know anybody that's done that, but I'm sorry? Are you safe with this? Okay. Okay. Okay, the fourth solvent we have here is just plain water. So we're seeing more and more finishes these days that have water in it. Have any of you experimented, worked with water-based finishes? Okay, a few. They're getting better and better with water-based finishes, but it is not what you would call a traditional finish. But it is coming on. If you're in California, it's more likely you're going to run across water-based finishes out there. The environmental laws are much stricter out there than they are here. If you're in a finishing shop and you've got a vent taking your going to the roof, there's a guy outside with a little meter wanting to know how much you're putting out into the air. So they're very particular in some states like California more than they would be here. So those are the basic solvents. Let's get into then the finish types. Starting over here, these are the these are the two most common that you hear about. This one's called linseed oil, or actually in little words up here it says boiled linseed oil. So linseed oil comes from a flax seed. So it's a natural product that comes from the flax plant. So it's a natural product. It's been around a long time. This is 100% pure tung oil. and it comes from the tongue nut of a tongue tree. So both of these oils are fairly natural products. They don't make good finishes in their raw state or in their most pure state. Now this one is not pure linseed oil, it's boiled linseed oil. Now I'm not sure why they put the term boiled in there. I think there is a historical significance to that. But what boiled linseed oil is, it just has some other chemical additives into it that help catalyze the finish. Once you put it down, it's going to dry quicker. If you didn't have those chemical additives in here, it would take days and days and days and days to dry. Tongue oil, typically you don't use this either. I've got some, but you probably wouldn't want to use this directly as a finish. You might mix it with something else if you wanted to, mix it with some polyurethane maybe. You could do that, and then the combination would dry. But pure tongue oil by itself almost won't dry at all. And besides that, neither one of these finishes are very durable. But they are popular to some extent, and boiled linseed oil more than others. Where these come into use are these products over here, which are the products. This one says antique oil. This one says Formby's tongue oil finish. These are not the same. It says tongue oil on here. All that means is there is some tongue oil in it. But this is primarily, like the rest of these over here, polyurethane or varnish. The varnishes, I mentioned, are probably the oldest product out there, and it's the resin from a tree like a pine tree. If you've ever gotten into pine, or even like from Home Depot or someplace, and you get a real wet 2x4 and there's a little void in there and there's some gummy stuff in there, that's the resin that's going to be turned into varnish. And you take that resin, you mix it with some oil, you heat it, and it turns into varnish. So there's more to it than that, but that's basically it. It's the heated up resin plus some oil and some solvent in there too, mineral spirits. So the polyurethane is going to be a mineral spirit solvent that is used for it. Now a whole different other category of finish, if we come forward into more modern times, around 1800 plus or minus somewhere, somebody discovered that you can take this stuff here, these shellac flakes, and you put it in some alcohol. And I did this about 10 minutes ago, and you can see it's starting to dissolve. It takes a while to dissolve, but you wind up, the raw product for shellac are these flakes. And if you want to pass some of these around, that's how it's sold. Now shellac comes from the lac bug. The lac in shellac is referring to a bug that comes from Southeast Asia. India, China, Southeast Asia, that general vicinity over there, there's a bug, the lac bug, that gets up into a tree, and he spins a cocoon. And the cocoon winds up, first of all, he's eating the resin out of the tree. So in effect, it's a resin-based finish, but it goes through the bug first. So it's processed resin by the lac bug. He spins a cocoon, so the lac bug spins a cocoon around him, and the cocoon hardens. And then you get these natives that go out there, the workers, into the trees where these lac bugs are, these big 20-foot poles, and they start whacking the branches, and they have a canvas or a sheet of something down on the ground, and all these shells come flying down to the ground, and they collect all these shells from the lac bug cocoons. They take it back somewhere, they'll put it, heat it up, and they'll put it into little flakes. They'll let it dry, and once it's dry, then they can break it up into these flakes like that. It turns hard again. Most of it winds up going to Germany. And one of the properties of the shellac is it has a certain amount of wax in it. So they have processing plants, a lot of them in Germany, where they take the raw shellac, they'll heat it up again, and they put it through a process they call dewaxing. So when you get something like the raw shellac like this, it's going to say dewaxed and then the color of it. So it comes in different colors. But the better finish is going to be if it doesn't have the wax. So dewaxing it turns it into a much better finish. It's harder, more water resistant when you do it like that. I'll pass this around. You can't go everywhere and find this stuff. You can go to Woodcraft, has it here in town. I'm not sure where else you could go to buy the shellac flakes. You can certainly get them from Jeff Jewett and his company, Homestead. But other than Woodcraft, I'm not sure where else you would go. There might be some specialty hardware stores that you can go and find it, like in Elliott's or something like that. They might have it. But shellac came around in the 1800s, and it took the furniture industry by storm because it's a beautiful finish, absolutely beautiful. It goes on pretty quickly. It dries very quickly, and it produces a just gorgeous finish. Some of the finest antique furniture is going to be shellac. Yes, sir? Well, they have anything from blonde to that one, which is a dark one called garnet. So, and everything in between. You can start with one. They have orange, they have garnet, they have blonde, and then they have, I forget what they call it, the one that's in between. That one would probably be a little darker than you might want to start with. But wherever you go, like Woodcraft, they'll have choices for you. I would pick one that's sort of in the middle. If you have maple and you want to keep something, you know, if you're doing a board like this, and you want to keep the you don't want to turn yellow or orange. You want to keep it as clear as possible. Then you would get what's called the blonde shellac. It takes a while for it to dissolve. I'll start passing this around. You can see the color coming from it. It's that's like I say, it's a fairly dark color on that one. It's a garnet. The way you apply it is you can apply it with a brush, and you can actually buy it pre-made. This is the only company, I think, that still sells shellac. There used to be a lot of companies that sold it, but once lacquer came around, and then later on when polyurethane came around, the popularity of shellac went way down. So, but it's a great finish if you learn how to work with it. And if you want to learn something that is a traditional, old, high-quality finish called French polishing, that's what you use with shellac. And you have a rag that you have a little gauze in the middle of it, and you soak it, and you go around in figure eights about 4,000 or 5,000 times on a piece of furniture, and it puts down layer after layer after layer of finish. You can wind up with hundreds of layers. It dries so fast, by the time you've completed an 8 in the figure 8 pattern, it's dry. It dries that fast, partly because the coats are so thin, and partly because it's just a very fast drying finish. So in the furniture business, something that dries fast, that's good. That's production. Back when all they had was a varnish to work with, it would take days and days and days. If you're making a Stradivarius violin, so what? You know, it's a small thing, and if you take a few days to do it, no problem. But if you're doing production furniture, it's a different story.
What about the aerosol shellac compared to?
Because it's such a fast drying product, typically you'll have pretty good luck with the aerosol. And the same is going to be true with lacquer. Both are very fast drying products. And it's almost, if you don't do something to inhibit it drying quickly, it just dries too fast. Your brush will stick to the piece of wood. Sanding between coats in large part is a function of what's in the air. that settles on your wood. So if you have polyurethane that you put a coat on and you come back the next day and it's a little rough, that's mostly the dust that's settled out of the air and settled into the finish, which takes hours and hours and hours to dry, 12 hours to dry or something like that, versus one of these finishes, it's dry in 10 minutes. Shellac, they say, has about a 6-month shelf life. You look for the date on the bottom. But there is a shelf life on shellac, and typically they say you don't want to mix up a lot of this in advance. And so if the shelf life on the flakes can be years, but the shelf life once it's mixed up, like that jar going around, you don't want to keep it around very long. You can use it. What happens is the finish doesn't wind up as being as durable. So it's one of the reasons why shellac has a reputation of not being a very durable finish, is a lot of people use, it's either got wax in it or it's more than 6 months old.
You can also use it as wood sealer.
It's a great sealer. One of the interesting things when you learn about the different kinds of products and with different solvents is you can start mixing things. So if you want to put a sealer on a board and you're using an alcohol-based product like shellac, and then you want to come on top of it with a mineral spirit oil-based product like a varnish, towing oil, linseed oil, something like that, they're different solvents. So one is not going to dissolve the other. And you can actually put a layer in between coats if you want to seal something off. Say you put a stain down, and then you don't want the next coat of stain or the next finish that you put on top of it to dissolve into that stain that you just put down. You can seal it with a shellac, and because it's alcohol-based, and if you're using a mineral spirit-based thing coming on top of it, the two are not going to interact. So it can prove to be both a sealer for natural wood, and it can also be a sealer in between coats, or after you put the stain down and then before you put a top coat finish on it. So it's an excellent sealer, and again, part of the reason is because it dries so fast. It's really it's a fun product to work with because the fast drying property of it. A lot of us, all we've ever used our lives is polyurethane. We just got used to the idea that you put a coat on, you let it sit overnight. That's just all it is. When you get into one of these, it's a different story. So the other product that's great to experiment with is lacquer. Lacquer, like shellac, is a very fast drying. It's also what's referred to as an evaporative finish as opposed to reactive finish. So when you have a polyurethane-based product, it's what's called a reactive finish. Once it sets up, it's done. You're not going to do anything with it after that point. You could sand it. You could come back with some paint remover, finish remover, and try and strip it, something like that. But other than that kind of drastic action, there's nothing you can do with the finish. And what I mean by that is repair. So one of the nice things about either shellac or lacquer is they're evaporative finishes. So the solvent just evaporates and leaves the finish in place. So if you come back later and you put some of this finish on top of it, the solvent from either way, whether it's alcohol for the shellac or whether it's lacquer thinner with the lacquer, it partially dissolves the layer underneath it. So the two layers bond together very nicely, and it all melds together quite well. If you let polyurethane completely dry, it's a hard coat, so you put another coat of polyurethane on top of it. If you're, say, days later, I mean, it's not if it's a day later, but if you're several weeks later, say, you have a hard finish, and it's a little more difficult for the next layer to bond to the layer underneath, whereas these just all kind of merge together. And because of that, you can fix things. If you have a problem, you have scratches, you have blemishes, you have things going wrong with the finish, you can actually come back with either alcohol or lacquer thinner or another coat of this stuff and you can work with the finish. You can redissolve it on your furniture and work with it. If you ever used a product called Formbee's Refinishing product, that product works because it depends on the finish that you're working with is a commercially made piece of furniture that has either shellac or lacquer on it. And so that you can easily dissolve that finish, clean out the impurities without having to go to the extreme of stripping it. So repairability is very good with either shellac or lacquer. As far as durability, there's probably nothing more durable than the polyurethane-based finishes. So someone was asking earlier, I've got a tabletop. What would be my best finish for a tabletop? Well, it depends on what you want to do with it and what kind of table it's going to be. If it's going to take some rough treatment, you're probably better off having some kind of a polyurethane or varnish-based finish because it will set up and it'll be nice and hard. If you have something that's going to be more of a decorative piece, you can actually get a very good quality finish from varnish if you do it right. In other words, you don't use it right out of the can like you can with these others. But it's up to you. Like I say, if you really thin it and you put multiple coats on, it can be days and days and days. If you're using either shellac or lacquer, you can take minutes and minutes and minutes instead of days and days and days to finish something. So a lot of us, when we're doing wood turning, we like to use something that'll dry fast. Craft Supply sells this stuff they call friction polish. So it's a mixture of things. It's got, I think, some of everything in it. It's got some lacquer, some shellac, and then at the very bottom you can see this layer down here. You have to shake it up to get this gummy stuff down at the bottom, some wax. But it's very fast drying, and the wax, once you get it turning, because it has some wax content to it, it makes a very nice looking finish. So for wood turning, I like this. It goes on. You can put lots of coats on it.
Put it on with a rag.
Put it on with a rag, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or a paper towel, either one. So that brings us to, I'll mention just briefly wax. Wax as a finish all by itself. I've seen furniture, I've got some furniture in my house that has nothing but wax as a finish on it. So you can use wax just as a finish all by itself. It's not going to be water resistant at all, and it may need reapplication from time to time to rejuvenate the wax finish. But you can use wax either on the raw wood by itself, or you can put wax on top of another finish and buff it out.
Take a long time to dry.
Wax? Not really. No, it's pretty quick. There's mineral spirit solvents in it, and it evaporates, but it hardens up pretty quickly. It evaporates off pretty quickly. It's not like the varnishes. So down here, we've got all these different products. There's water locks. This one's Minwax tung oil finish. This one is Formbee's tung oil finish. This one is Watco Danish oil. Here we have Minwax antique oil. Save that one a second. Here's one called salad bowl finish, but it's really not much different than any of these. So there's one of the common questions people ask is, what finish can I use that's food safe? And both of these guys, they get that question every time they do a lecture. And the answer is all finishes are food safe. What's not food safe are the solvents. But the solvents evaporate. They go away. And if you read the can, it'll tell you, it says on the back here, it contains aliphatic hydrocarbons, mineral spirits. So it has the same solvent as everything else that's in here. And it has some oils and some polyurethane to harden up. So it's really not much different.
Does the back of that can say like what it used to say on it? I used to, when I do this, I always get that can and I have to read it because people ask food safe. And you read that directions and it's like, don't inhale it.
Oh, yeah.
Touch it if it gets on your shoes or your pants.
It's got words like get medical attention immediately. uh, okay. And in big bold it says delayed effects from long-term overexposure. Contains solvents which can cause permanent brain and nervous system damage. Does this sound like what they're saying on the front? Salad bowl finish? I mean, there's like you say, there's a disconnect between the fine print on the back and the big label on the front. But truthfully, they say, just let it dry. Well, that's true with any of these. You just let them dry, and they're all fine.
When it dries, have you got a hard, slick finish, or what is it?
Yeah, it's just polyurethane. Thin polyurethane with some oil in it. These are pretty much all the same. Now, some are going to be the resins, either polyurethane or a varnish, and mixed in with some oil. Or sometimes there's not an oil. This one doesn't have oil in it. This is just polyurethane. Back to the history a little bit. So I mentioned that shellac was real big, starting around 1800. Shellac got almost completely replaced by nitrocellulose lacquer in 1920. So this became, it was almost overnight, the furniture industry switched from shellac to lacquer, and primarily because they figured out they can spray it on, and it's dry in minutes. And it's a beautiful finish. And it also has great properties where you can come back and rub it out, put a nice gloss on it. It works well. It's even more durable than shellac. So because of all those properties, particularly the speed, we're talking about production furniture here, and speed is everything. This completely took over, and that's why there's only one company almost left in the world that sells this product here, Zinsser. You try and, you won't find a can of anything else except for Zinsser. Now you'll find some of those flakes from different places, but as far as a can like that, they've got the world monopoly on it. But they have a lot of competition from the other finishes. So 1920s, we came into the lacquer era and spray finishing, and that really took off. And it wasn't until 1956 that DuPont came up with polyurethane. So instead of a natural resin, which varnishes had been made out of for years and years, DuPont came up with a chemical process to produce a synthetic resin that they then mixed with the other solvents, mineral spirits, to produce polyurethane. And it's a great product. And all the tests that I've seen over the years where people have compared one finish with another, if you do one thing, you almost can't tell the difference between something that is a polyurethane finish versus something that's lacquer or shellac, and that is you thin it. One of the biggest mistakes we make is we go buy a can of polyurethane, get a brush it on, maybe even wipe it on, and it just has that thick gloppy look to it. It really doesn't look very good at all. So there's nothing wrong with using polyurethane, but never ever use it in your wood turnings or on something that you consider a piece of fine furniture, like a tabletop or a chair or something like that. Don't use it full strength, thin it. Now, what you'll find though, when you do that, it's going to take lots of coats, and you have to let it dry overnight. My experience is 4 coats is a minimum. 6 coats is ideal. So if you figure there's a night in between, that's a lot of time to get there. But it works, it's great, it's good finish if you thin it. This thing called wipe-on poly is nothing but polyurethane mixed 50-50 with mineral spirits. That's all it is.
So you don't have to thin that?
Not this, not this one. So they say hand rub beauty with polyurethane protection. And that's true.
So what's the difference between that and, say, the antique oil finish?
This one, the antique oil finish, is actually going to have some oil in it. So in addition to having the polyurethane thinned with mineral spirits, this will have a third ingredient. It'll have oil. So the oil, whether it's linseed oil or tung oil, it has a nice quality. It reacts nicely with the wood. So it gives it actually a little improved look to it. There's one here called Sam Malouf finish. You can get this, I think Rockler has this. I don't know if Woodcraft sells this or not. But it's a poly oil finish. And a guy named Sam Malouf, who's a famous furniture maker out in California, came up with this thing, and he uses it for all his fine furniture. It's just polyurethane and oil. So it's like 1/3 polyurethane, 1/3 tung oil or boiled linseed oil, and 1/3 mineral spirits. And that's about all it is. But if you want to get it all mixed to his specification, you can buy it like that.
What's the best thinner to use for that lap on poly?
There's only one kind of thinner. It's mineral spirits. That's all there is.
How does it change the shelf life?
Uh,
I mean, you're okay to.
It does, unlike shellac, the shelf life I don't think is a problem. Now you'll wind up, air will get in the can. If it's a half a can, you'll get that thick skin on it that you have to peel off to get to the liquid underneath it. But it doesn't have that property like shellac does, where you start going beyond 6 months and you're getting into trouble. I've used some of this stuff after quite some time. Deft is lacquer. Anybody use Deft clearwood finish? That's lacquer. It's the same as this right here, Valspar. You can get Deft or Valspar at Home Depot or Lowe's.
Have you compared the solids content of that?
Yes, I have.
Deft is almost like nothing.
This, when I was going after some Deft one day, and they didn't have any, and they said, well, we got this Valspar, and I said, what's that? So I picked up some of this. This is, I don't know what the factor is, but I'd say it has 3 or 4 times more of the solid content than Deft. I've really become a fan of the Valspar over Deft.
What's the price of that?
I don't know. I don't think it was much different than the Deft.
You go to like a hobby store or something, where they do airplanes, color airplanes and stuff, they'll sell lacquer, and it'll cost like twice that much. Boy, I'll tell you what, it's unbelievable, and it's hell out heavy. You tell them to do that.
So it really is different.
It is, well, until they change the formula. They don't tell you these things. I used to make boomerangs, and I had this one particular finish, and then all of a sudden it didn't work the same. Well, they changed the formula.
Huh.
But you get what you pay for.
This, you'll take fewer coats to finish what you've got with the Valspar, my experience, than the Deft.
Krylon also makes a lacquer, and it's also a high solids compared to say Deft.
Okay.
We have that out at paint store out by Albertsons.
Sherman, okay. Now Deft has you can also, like this, you can get it in a can. They call it brushing lacquer. So they've put some retarders in it so it doesn't dry quite so quickly, and you can work with it with a brush. And I've used that in the past, and it worked out very nicely. But for spraying, and if you're going to get a spray can or something, you can't beat this. And it just works so fast. If you haven't tried finishing with lacquer, try it with your stuff. Valspar. It's a big finishing company.
How long do you wait between coats?
20 minutes. It doesn't take very long.
So Watco is just another name for
Watco is another name for polyurethane and oil. Danish oil finish. So I didn't mention that, but it's here somewhere, isn't it? Yeah. Watco Danish oil finish, polyurethane and oil. These are all the same. Now, one may use linseed oil, and the other one uses tung oil. You know, this one has no oil in it at all. It's just the polyurethane, so it's a little bit different. But now this one is a gel. I haven't really played much with the gel finishes. Has anybody worked with any of these? This one, I haven't even opened this can yet. Wipe on satin clear coat polyurethane gel. Doesn't drip.
used some years and years ago.
Okay.
Get down at the corner or something on the door.
Yeah, it's real thick, so you don't have to put as many coats on. You like working with it? Okay. Just don't use regular polyurethane. Thin it 50-50 with mineral spirits, otherwise known as paint thinner, whichever is cheaper. So just another note here on the handout near the bottom. It talks about products of petroleum distillation. This is sort of an interesting thing to realize. That, petroleum distillation, you wind up with products from gasoline on the one end to wax on the other. And then you've got a range in between. And as I indicate on here, if you're on further on the left end of this scale, it's going to be less oily and faster evaporating. And on the right end of the scale, it's going to be more oily and slower evaporating. A little misspelling there. But you can see where mineral spirits is. And there's a product called naphtha. If you've seen naphtha on the shelf. If you want something like mineral spirits, but you want it to evaporate faster, just use naphtha instead. MEK? Yeah. Methyl ethyl ketone? I don't know anything about it. Yeah, that's probably why I don't know anything about it. It's hazardous to your health. Okay. Probably under very controlled circumstances. Hmm? It thins CA, okay. So other finishes that I haven't talked about because I don't really know anything about them and haven't had the experience is the water-based, conversion, varnishes, catalyzed finishes, things along that nature. But if you want to take some of these flakes with you, if you want a sample of that, feel free to take it. Feel free to look at these books. Are any questions you have? Yes, sir.
The one thing that I like about shellac, if you're turning an oily wood, say like Eastern red cedar, some of the polys and things won't dry because of the oil in the wood. You use the shellac,
Seal it off.
seals all that in,
Yeah.
and then you put whatever you want on top of it.
Yep. Good point.
Sealing knots and
Sealing
pine.
knots and pine. If you've had a wood like pine where you put a stain on it and everything that was white is now dark and everything that was dark is now white, so you get all that blotchy look, you can use shellac, just a little thin coat of shellac on there, and it will seal the wood enough where you don't have the stain taking so differently from one little place to another. That blotchiness goes away. So shellac is good for clearing up that blotchiness. Ward?
This is kind of off the subject of what you're doing, but you got kerosene written down.
Uh-huh.
So if anybody ever uses an oil-based paint, like a sign painter's paint, and it's not going on real good, you put like 2 or 3 drops of kerosene in it, stir it up, and it gets rid of varnish.
Okay.
That's a sign painter's trick that I was talking. Anyway, question: if you're putting lacquer down, or you're putting varnish down, how many coats of lacquer would it take to equal 1 coat of varnish?
Of the kind of varnish I'm talking about, it's probably pretty equal. Because I'm talking about real thin varnish.
Okay, so let's say you put down 10 coats of lacquer, and put down 10 coats of varnish, and then you sand. Can you sand through the first 2 coats of lacquer, or you sand through the first 2 coats of varnish? What's going to be the difference?
Okay. That points out, and I don't know if this is what you were leading me to say, one of the properties I mentioned of both lacquer and shellac is when you put a coat on, it melts into the coat just beneath it. So there's no line in between the coats. It all forms very continuous bond in there. Whereas with polyurethane, you don't have that. When you put a coat of polyurethane down and then another coat on top of it, another coat on top of it, if you sand through that top coat, you could see the line where the boundary is between the two coats, and you won't see that with lacquer or shellac. Anything else I haven't said that I need to say?
Makes repair and polyurethane years down a lot different.
Yeah, it's a lot more difficult to repair, yes. So a lacquer or shellac finish is much easier to repair. Much easier for those reasons.
All these products here are virtually mineral spirits, polyurethane, with the exception of the antique oil. And it's got
No, it's the same. Oh, well, it's polyurethane, but it just has oil in it. So this one has oil in it. That's a completely different product. Let me mention that. This one has oil in it. That one's got oil in it. These have oil. That one has oil. That one has oil. So this one doesn't. This one's just polyurethane. This is polyurethane. And this is called marine spar varnish. Now, I just brought that in, not that you're going to use it with your wood turnings, but not many people realize what the heck's marine spar varnish. It's a more flexible varnish. One of the problems in outdoor finishing is you can get something that the sun affects it. So the UV properties, this gives you better UV protection from the sun with this spar varnish. But secondly, it's a flexible varnish. So it's not brittle, and it won't flake as readily as a regular varnish that dries real hard. So it's good outdoor finish for your front door or outdoor furniture or something.
Do one thing. I'll give you a little hint of advice. Put a whole bunch of lacquer on a base.
Lacquer is very sensitive to moisture in the air.
What's it going to do?
It's going to can blush on you, turn white. It can trap. It dries so fast it traps the moisture underneath it. That's what happens if you have a table and you put a glass down. Moisture gets down, and you get this white ring. That's moisture trapped underneath the finish. That will come out, and there are products that help that come out. You can spray something on there, kind of dissolves it a little bit, and the moisture will come out. So there's special products they make for that. But yeah, it can moisture can be a problem with lacquer.
We can use lacquer thinner to do that. You just spray the lacquer thinner on there, usually take the blush out.
Yeah, that sounds right. And the products they make, they call blush remover. It's probably just lacquer there. Polyurethane will too. Oh, we're spraying it. Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to use a belt sander to look at that.
Not with the lacquer. With the polyurethane, you might. Polyurethane, once it sets, it's hard. You can't redissolve it. You can redissolve lacquer and shellac.
Which is your favorite, or which do you use the most?
My favorite finish of all these is this one right here.
That's what I use most of.
If you're doing any kind of furniture work or good woodwork, I just love this finish. It goes on quick. Set it on the floor and spray it. Come back in 10 minutes, spray it again. Come back another 20 minutes, spray it a third time. You're done. Put it 3 coats in an hour. Whereas the polyurethane, it'd be 3 days.
You're saying 3 coats is plenty.
3 coats is, I don't think less than that is going to work. 6 coats would be the max, but somewhere between 3 and 6. Yeah, if you have orange peel, you got something else going wrong. I mean, there are problems that can come up with when you're spraying, and orange peel and dripping and sags and things like that are problems that can happen if you're too close or too far away or too hot, something like that. It needs to flow out where it's even. Anything else?
You use the spray Valspar on your trimmings?
I have typically used the friction polish, which is about the same thing, except it's got a little wax in it. Just because it's on a rag and it's on my lathe, and so I'm turning. I just use it. I just put it on there, and it's just easy. Because to spray it, you have to take it off. But if you're working with something on the lathe, I like using friction polish.
I like that Shellac friction.
Okay, it's probably similar. Shellac, I think.
It's friction polish.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. So those are my two favorite finishes. Okay, next.
We probably all use a lot of the same stuff Chris was just talking about. I mean, I do too, but I also do some just plain buffing on stuff. A lot of people just do buffing. Yes? Anyway, so this is sort of the Beal buffing system. This is John's setup, John Solberg, and he just puts it on his lathe. I have the same kind of deal that I made, and I have it set up on a mini lathe that I never take it off. And one of them's Triple E, white diamond, and carnauba wax is what I use. So I do it just so, and I'm just going to go through this real quick, and you can see it. And then I got one of those little setup that you probably have seen before. So I brought a couple things here, just as just a little bowl there that I had turned. Let's see here. Okay. So Triple E, white diamond, and carnauba wax. Everybody knows what that all is? Yes? Is that okay? So you don't need much of this stuff on here. So this is just started off as a, I'm only going to do part of it, then I'll pass it around so you can see what it does. Starting with Triple E, yeah. And then white diamond. And especially on figured wood, it really helps a lot if you don't want to do anything else. And a lot of times I just like to do this stuff. And one of these will last 10 lifetimes or more. So if you got friends, buy one and split it up. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it does. It just gets finer as you go along. And everybody knows what carnauba wax is, I assume. If I was probably going to do this whole thing, I'd do this each coat a little bit longer, but this will do for show you what it's going to look like. Who has not used this kind of stuff? Many people haven't used it, really? Critical thing here is hang on. You know, it's really bad if you get this all this far and you get this thing and it catches and it goes bouncing across your shop. It always gets dinged or broken. You know, it's a lot of time. The worst ones I do is when I'm turning little balls. They're hard to hang on to. I've lost a lot of those. I'm going to show you that in just a second. Okay, so I'll just pass this around. You can see where it started to where it is now. Just pass that around. So I'm going to turn this off real quick and go to plan B. I have no idea. No, actually not real fast. Mine never comes off. That's what I don't know, because my little small lathe doesn't have I have it just set on medium and I just turn it on. It's whatever it is what it is. Okay, so real quick I want to show you what this gentleman was asking. And you don't have to buy all these things. You can make it yourself. I think I won this one somewhere. So basically you're doing the same thing here as I just did on the outside. Yeah, I can't remember. Okay, so I was going to do, where is it? The inside. Huh? I do. These are the small ones. I brought one of the other ones along. This is the next size up. Yeah, I have. Yeah, you pretty much have to have 3 of these, otherwise you can't do them all in one. Just like this, 3 different things. This is obviously the Tripoli because it's the color here. And let's see. You got to hang on to this a little different now. It gets a little trickier here. Yeah, I'm sure you can. Yeah. This is just on straight wood, you know. I do this a lot without putting anything on it. Just depends on the wood, what I'm doing, but some of that stuff you have to be careful. If you have just a thin coat and you try to buff it, you can buff right through a finish if you're not careful, because lacquer's really thin. It's super thin. So if you put this on here and start pressing, you may not have any lacquer left, but you have a lot of this. Yeah, you may have to go back and rebuff it, yes. You know, it's not a permanent, but it just sits there. Yeah, it just sort of sits there and stuff. And, well, I'm not going to put the other wheels on, but it's the same thing. And you can make one. You don't have to do this. You can make something simpler than this. And you can probably make something like this too, but it's just easier to buy all 3 of them the way I look at it. And actually, I won one of these at the Dallas Club, a whole set. So, but anyway, so you can do the inside like that. Now, if you start getting, like the first one I passed around, that's a little harder. Then you have to come up with a new plan because it's really, really small. But you can do it. You know, you just put it all together, and just make it happen. So, anybody got any questions? I just wanted to show you a quick way to do this stuff. Yes, sir.
What grit do you sand to before you start using that?
It sort of depends on what I'm doing. I usually sand to 400-ish. That's about where I go. So somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah, well, it depends what you're doing. You know, if you wanted something like that, yeah, sand it way down. And obviously, it'll work better the farther you sand it. Okay, next. John's got a lot to talk about.
John and I always get into this conversation about what is really a good finish for a bowl. And it all boils down to, do you want a bowl as a utility bowl, or do you want a utility bowl to serve your popcorn in and that sort of thing, or do you want a bowl for show? And I have a very favorite finish, and I consider it a utility finish that I put on, and it's strictly a utility finish, and it works really well for popcorn bowls and all of that sort of thing. And it is nothing more than myelin sanding sealer mixed with lacquer thinner, 50-50. So you end up with a slurry of the myelin sanding sealer in the lacquer. And I put 1 to 2 coats of this on. It dries very quickly. It's a great way of sealing wood. Gives you a very fast seal and gives you a pretty good shine besides. And then I like to put Mahoney's walnut oil on top of it. And I like this because as the finish matures or you use it for your popcorn bowl, you can always add another coat of walnut oil, and just to bring the finish back if you get finger scratches in it or whatever. And so that's my favorite finish, and I'm going to pass a bowl around that's got it in it. And you can see it's a wonderful finish for feel, but it's certainly not a show finish. It's not something that you would put in a gallery and use. And,
John, how do you do on fingers, bud?
I'm sorry?
On fingers, you got oil coming out of the person's finger and putting your hand on it. Does it work good on that?
It works. This stuff dries really well. I don't put on heavy coats. I put 2 or 3 very light coats on. I put it on the lathe while the bowl is spinning, and I burnish it in with my hand or a paper towel. Let it sit a little bit and then wipe it off. And you can see this one going around. It gets used at home for fruit and things. And I don't buff it. I don't do anything with it. I'll put a coat of this on, and if I buff it at all, I'll just buff it with a rag, just hand buff it.
Do you have to use the lacquer thinner with the mylar?
I like to do that because the mylan is too thick by itself. Chris was talking about that a bit, and I think it's a lot better thinned out. It goes on with a much better even finish. If you use it straight out of the can, it tends to streak, and it dries very quickly. And it dries so quick you can't get it.
They make us aerosol sanding too.
And most of those are shellac based. And it would probably work just as well. But I like to seal the wood first before I put the walnut oil on. And a little later we'll talk about that as well. John Beasley likes really shiny finishes, and this is what I would consider a show finish. And John was going to talk about how to get that finish, and I've got a handout here on how he does it. And his favorite finish is this water-based polyacrylic finish, and that's the one we're going to talk about. Chris held this up a little earlier. This is a stick that John put together where he sanded to 320, added a coat on this side of shellac, on the other side of the mylan sanding sealer that we just talked about, and then he's let those dry, and then he's put 3 or 4 coats of this water-based polyacrylic on this stick, and let that dry for about, I think he said, a week to 10 days, just to let it cure. And then he's gone through the various steps of polishing that finish. The first step, so if you want a bowl that's not show quality, but you still want something with a nice finish, you can get a popcorn bowl like this by just sanding it out to 800. If you want a little better finish, you sand it to 1,000. A little nicer finish, you sand it to 1,500. Then John adds a material called rotten stone, which is just a very fine powder that's used as a high gloss finish. And then on top of that, if you really want to show finish, John has gone to McGuire's Auto Fine Cut Cleaner, and then a swirl remover, and then a wax on top of it. It's a very long process, but you absolutely get a show finish. And I'll pass his show bowl around, but please be careful with it. It's part of a set that he's got, that so we don't want to drop it and damage it. But it's probably one of the nicest show finishes I've seen, and this is the process he uses. There's a sheet going around so you can see how it's done, and it ends up being just a wonderful finish.
One of the distinctives of the water-based finishes like that is that it doesn't color. It's very neutral. So you can see this finish. There's almost no coloring whatsoever on the wood.
He thought that when he started with the shellac on one side that he was going to get some darkening, but he used a blonde shellac, and so he got no color in it. So he can't tell the difference between his shellac and the sanding sealer we used on the other side. So, yeah. So.
What would happen if you put that finish on a walnut bowl?
It will darken a bit. It'll look very nice. We're going to have some fun here now, because everything Chris has talked about tonight is kind of boiled down to something that John and I tried to figure out. What happens if you take a finish and you put it in the kitchen and you use it? And what happens to your finish and what choices should you use for material to make your finishes. And I don't know if I'm connected here or not.
You didn't have a very good sermon. The plate come back empty.
Oh, no.
I'm going to pass this around again, and you can see that over time here, it's been about an hour, how much it's dissolved in an hour. John, you want to pass your plate around again?
Yeah, pass the plate around again. So really, what kind of preconceived ideas do we have about finishes and what's going to happen? There are many factors that are suitable to use. Turners look at using a finish that's a utility finish, which is really something you want in the kitchen. Probably an oil-based product. That's kind of what we end up using for the kitchen. What about lacquers and urethanes? So let's see if we can find out what really happens to a finish if, well, we didn't do that. So the first step was to look at some different finishes and compare the commonly used display finishes, which is like the bowl that John made that is passing around, versus a utility finish like this bowl. And so we're going to look at what happened. We took 7 different blocks of wood and cut bowls in them. And you'll be able to, I'm not going to pass around. You can come up here and look at them afterwards. And wanted to do a comparison of what happened. So we cut a dish out of each of them. We sanded them all to 320. And then we selected only finishes that John had in his shop, which I was surprised he had as many as he did. All the finishes were put on per the instructions on the can. So you picked up the can, and we looked at what it said, how to use it. We followed that. We had no sanding after the finishes were put on, and we allowed 60 days. Now this is the unusual part, because we thought we were going to do this demonstration back in July. And so we started putting this all together back there. So they've sat for 60 days. So the finishes are well cured over that period of time. Here are the finishes that we used. Mahoney's walnut oil, which is one of my favorite finishes, and I think that's probably why. We used a general finish of polyacrylic water base, deft gloss brushing lacquer, Minwax wipe-on poly, and I think there might be some of that here. There's some wipe-on polys. So that's one of the finishes that were used. Watco Danish oil, and I think that's here. So that was used. Waterlux tongue oil, and we've got some tongue oil here. I'm not sure it's Waterlux. Yeah, this is the Waterlux tongue oil. And general finishes, high performance water-based polyurethane. And we used 4 coats and allowed 24 hours drying between each coat. So here's the 7 samples with the 7 finishes, and throughout the rest of this presentation, they'll stay in that order that you see them. So we started out with the Mahoney's, and we worked our way through. So we have a combination of oil, the tongue oils, the Danish oils, and then the harder finishes. And so here's the first 2, Mahoney's walnut oil and the water-based polyacrylic, which is one of John's favorite oil finishes. The gloss, I can't read that from here, but the wipe-on poly and the Yep, clear wipe on, and that's here someplace as well, I think. You don't have the depth, okay. And here's the Danish walnut oil and the tung oil and the water-based polyacrylic. And so, and all 7 of the bowls are up here. You can come look at them. One of the things we discovered when we did this is that the oils all penetrated the wood really, really well. So well that you can see the oil seeping out the sides of the bowl. And the other 4 finishes did not have that penetration. And that sort of surprised us a bit, that we got that kind of penetrating from the oils. So we thought that was a natural advantage of the oil, particularly if you're in the kitchen. You're going to penetrate into the wood, and it will be a good preservative for the wood as well.
What kind of wood is that?
This is all maple, just standard maple.
And did y'all put them on with the cloth or?
We put them on per the instructions on the can. So whatever the can said, if it said wipe on, we wiped it on. If it said brush it on, it was brushed on. So then we went through John's kitchen, and we found a whole bunch of stuff. And we're going to put a dab of a bit on each of them. We let it soak on the wood for 20 hours. No, but she wasn't concerned because none of the things we were working with could explode. So that's kind of the way the experiment went. Here are the materials we picked. And we just grabbed them at random, and you can see we've got mustard, catsup, mayonnaise, pickles, grape jelly, peanut butter, ranch dressing, barbecue sauce, horseradish, Worcestershire sauce, and a vinegar and oil dressing. And we thought that was a pretty good representation of acidity and base products, and so we just wanted to see what happened. So we put them on. Each of these bowls got them put on in the same order that you just saw them. So we started over here with the mustard and worked our way around and put the red wine vinegar dressing right in the middle. And so they're all there, and we put them on all 7 bowls in identical spots. I mean, everybody's concerned about what happens with finishes in your kitchen. So we decided we needed to find out. 20 hours later, they look pretty grody.
Was there a control? Were there 7 bowls with nothing on?
No. There wasn't even 1 bowl with nothing on. So, and here's the walnut oil. 20 hours later, it looks pretty bad. And here's all 7 of them, and they all look pretty bad. Now, does anybody want to guess what happened? You know, so shut up. Drum roll. Anybody?
Put them in the dishwasher?
No, we didn't put them in the dishwasher. We took them in and put them in the sink. We washed them in the sink with the light soap and water. No guesses? Come on.
Lots of stains. No, nothing.
No stains? No finish got eaten through? This one over here? It looks pretty grody, doesn't it? What do you think happened to the finish? I think that's one of the polyacrylic ones. We've got the oil here and there, and tung oil up here, I believe. So which finish is going to come out the best? You think the oil? I would think the oil. Polyurethane, is that what everybody's thinking? Here they all are. They're all unstained except they all have one stain. Can anybody guess what that one stain is? Shut up. Ketchup. Ketchup. Vinegar and oil. Mustard. Who else? Pickles. Okay. Mustard. There it is. Every one of these bowls has a mustard stain on it. And here's a little closer view of it. So, whatever you want to put in your kitchen should work okay. So then we decided, how about if we put a little kitchen red wine in there? What's going to happen? Red wine tends to be a little more acidic, and so we wanted to try that. So here's John putting a dab of red wine in each of them. And it was morning. We didn't want to wait another 20 hours, so we waited 4 hours. And we cleaned those up.
Is this a $2 wine or a $40?
This was kitchen cooking wine, so it's probably the $2 wine. The wine stained the walnut oil and the Wacko oil, the Danish oil. It did not stain anything else. So we have very light stains, and they're hard to see. You can just barely see them, but it did stain a little bit. So then we decided we ought to try vinegar. So, and this is really hard to see, but down here in the bottom of each of these is a puddle of vinegar. And we let that sit for a couple hours. And lo and behold, we got nothing. Didn't do anything. So the moral of the story is, and Chris sort of alluded to this, why do we have all these stains? You don't need them all. Find a stain a finish that you like, use it. Use it in the kitchen. It's food safe, and you won't have any problems. Now, the one thing we did not do, and we're planning on doing that, and we may use our samples yet to do this, is in the kitchen, if you're making a salad, you've got sharp utensils going down in the bowl and scratching. And what happens if you scratch through one of these finishes and redo this and get some material on the scratch? And we don't know what would happen to the finish there. So that's still yet.
Find out next month.
Maybe. Well, it depends on John's health. So that's our results. And our conclusion is we don't need 10 different kinds of finish in our shop anymore. Find one or two that you like, use it, stick with it. And as far as kitchen products go, out of your refrigerator or cupboard, you won't have any trouble with them. So, any questions? We'll put these all in order up here, and you can come up and look at them.
The point about the water-based finish, see the difference in the water-based, and the one on the right is a tung oil. So this is what Oren was talking about, a warm finish versus a cool finish. So that's typically what you get in the difference between water-based and oil-based finishes.
Is there any types of wood, John, that you would not use for the kitchen?
I wouldn't use Gaboon ebony at $100 a board foot. And there are some woods that are very toxic to people. John, I know you're allergic to cocobolo. Neil, I think he's finding he's allergic to cocobolo, so you probably wouldn't want to try and serve up a. You also might have problems with walnut oil if somebody has an allergy to nuts. I don't know if this would affect them or not. That I can't answer that. I haven't tried.
That cocobolo is toxic. If you breathe it, it can kill you.
No,
I've read that anyway.
I've breathed in a lot of its dust, and I'm still here.
Okay.
It doesn't affect everyone the same way.
It doesn't. You're right. If you're allergic to it, you may be a problem. Any other questions? Yeah.
Have you compared Mahoney's walnut oil to the regular walnut oil you can buy over there at the food store?
Yeah, the walnut oil in the food stores works nicely, but it takes forever to dry. This has got some dryers in it, and he's heated it so that the dryers have worked their way into the oil, and so it dries a lot better. But you could use standard walnut oil from the grocery store, but it just takes forever to dry.
John, what was your main purpose of this test?
We wanted to have some fun.
Not for you, somewhere.
No, this was part of the demonstration we wanted to do tonight, just to see what would happen to finishes in the kitchen, and we found out that all the finishes hold up pretty well.
You ought to send that into a magazine.
Fine woodworking or
Yeah, we might consider doing that. Any other questions? Neil, it's all yours.